In part 2 of this series, we're going to be discussing how prolonged sitting affects our own bodies in terms of posture. So when we look at the body as a whole, we refer to it as a kinetic chain. This means that any movement or position in one part of the body affects movement and positioning in another part of the body. More on this is that the hips are considered the foundation of our body. So anything that happens in the hips, whether they're too tight, too mobile, too weak, too strong, that has implications above and below the kinetic chain. And with sitting, the hips are most effective because they spend their time in a really flexed position. And now if we look at the spine, when we have this really flexed position in our hips, in order to accommodate that, because the body is a kinetic chain, we lose this lovely curvature in our lower back called the lordotic curve, and we create a much flatter spine over here. And because the spine needs to curve in order to stay neutral, if we're losing structure and lordosis over here, we're going to be creating increased flexion at the top, or kyphosis, that's what it's called at the top, and the shoulders and the middle back over here. And in turn, that creates flexion within the neck. Now what this looks like is if we lose that there, we gain that there, and we gain that there. Now that's a horrible seated position, but the reality is we're spending most of our days like this. So when we step out of sitting, we go into what's called a hyperlordotic phase, which is an anterior tilt, which has really bad implications on lower back pain. So people who are hyperlordotic or have lost their lordosis, so the hips are either going too far forward or you've lost the curvature of your lower back, have found to have lower back pain. Again, with sitting, when we spend our time in this really flexed position, our hip flexors become shorter, our glutes become longer. And again, shortened hip flexors have also been linked to lower back pain. So when we have these short hip flexors, long glutes, tight lower back, tight shoulders because everything is working in front of us, and a compensatory pointing of the chin outwards, we actually suppress the blood supply going to our brain. And this can create tension headaches, it can create fatigue, it can create blurry vision, and all those symptoms you get at the end of a long working day. So when we spend that time in a seated position, we're changing the body and therefore compensating to try and keep neutral. And this is why physiologically prolonged sitting affects the body visually and how you can feel and see those differences.